As part of Pokemon's 30th anniversary, the Pokémon Company re-released FireRed and LeafGreen and ignited a huge controversy among Pokémon fans and Nintendo fans. They are being sold on the eShop for $20 each. Yes, you heard me right, they cost $20. Two basic ports of GBA games from the early 2000s are being sold for $20 in 2026. Now the questions are, is that price too much? Should they have put them on NSO instead? And why didn't they release Red, Blue, and Yellow as well? And why no physical release? And how will other remakes like Heart Gold and Soul Silver and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire be released, and when? Let's tackle all these questions and more in today's video. Let's get into it. Now let's go back to 2016 for a moment, to when the Pokémon Company released Pokémon Red, Blue, and Yellow for the 3DS. This was 10 years ago for the 20th anniversary. So when you think about it, what they're doing right now with the GBA remakes on Switch makes sense as a cool follow-up to what they did with the Gen 1 games on 3DS. What doesn't make sense is to limit the fans by only bringing back the remakes instead of all versions of Gen 1. Nintendo and the Pokémon Company said that they chose FireRed and LeafGreen because they are the best versions of the Gen 1 video games. And yeah, that's probably true, but that doesn't mean that people don't want to play the original Game Boy versions. For nostalgia, many fans would prefer the Game Boy games over the remakes. I specifically played Yellow back in the day, so that version is the one that I'm most fond of. So it feels restrictive to only bring back the remakes. Pokémon Company is way too strict with the older games. It feels like they have like a Disney Vault type mentality. They keep their games locked away most of the time, except for those rare moments like anniversaries when they choose to let them out of the vault. The older games should always be around and be on the eShop or on NSO. Their excessive gatekeeping of older games is very weird.
Gotcha.
And speaking of NSO, why didn't they release this on NSO? You might be asking. There are two reasons. One reason is money. They want to profit as much as possible on these games. It's why they're charging $20 instead of a more reasonable $10 to $15. And because it's Pokemon, they know they can get away with it. And if we look back at the Wii U eShop, GBA games were $8 on Virtual Console. So these games should cost around $10, maybe $15 tops. $20 obviously seems too much for games that are so old and that aren't being remastered or remade, because it's not like they enhance these games too much. The aspect ratio is the same, it doesn't completely fill the full 16:9 screen of the Switch and our TVs. And it's not even being ported directly to Switch 2. It's a Switch 1 game, so it just runs on 1080p, maybe even less, probably 720. So it's a very basic port. It's obvious the company is very greedy, the Pokémon Company. So the most obvious question of this video has a very obvious answer. The game is $20 because the Pokémon Company is greedy, and they overvalue everything. But there's also another reason why it's not on NSO, and that's Pokémon Home. If the games had been put on NSO, on the GBA app, it would have been very hard, if not impossible, to do any integration to Pokémon Home, and that means that you would not be able to pass your Pokémon caught in this game, in both of these games, to Home, and from there to other more recent Pokémon titles, like Scarlet and Violet, for example. And come next year, to the new generation of games, to Pokémon Winds and Waves. The price is definitely too much, there's no denying it. But I'm not mad that it's not on NSO, and that it's being sold on the eShop instead, because not every retro game needs to be on NSO. And while buying a game digitally isn't owning them per se, since we're buying a license, not the game itself, we still have a higher level of ownership when we buy on the eShop than just by having something on NSO. Because NSO is a subscription library. You're basically just renting those games. There is no ownership at all. To be clear, I don't hate NSO, I actually like that service a lot. It's grown a lot and the library is very big and very diverse at this point. And it's very convenient. I love being able to take games from all the way back to the NES to more recently the GameCube with me on the go. But I wish we had more options. I wish we could also buy some of Nintendo's first party games from those years, be it as individual releases on the eShop or as part of collections, both digital and physical, like when they did Mario 3D All-Stars, but obviously without the stupid limited time window thing they did. The next question is what will happen to Gen 2 and Gen 3 remakes, and the base games as well. Now if you look at their past actions, including this recent release of FireRed and LeafGreen, I imagine we will have to wait a long time for Gen 2 and Gen 3 to be sold again. Who knows, by then maybe they want to remake them again, because if they take between 5 and 10 years to release Gen 2 for the 35th to the 40th anniversary, then maybe they feel inclined, by then, they might feel inclined to remake the remakes. Now, the next remake in theory should be Gen 5, aka Black and White. And if they remake Black and White, maybe they reuse those assets from that remake to remake Black and White 2 as well. But after that, it will be X and Y, and then Sun and Moon. But maybe they take their time in getting to X and Y, because they sneak Gen 2 in between Gen 5 and 6 remakes. Keep in mind that they did Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee on Switch 1, and those games are loose remakes of Pokémon Yellow, but with some new gimmicks and Pokémon Go integration. So they have already remade other games more than once before. So it is possible, but who knows how they'll handle this. We might get Gen 2 ports on the eShop, the Gen 2 DS remakes, or yeah, new remakes of Gen 2, and Gen 3. Either way, it will be several years till we see them again. I would love to know what you all think about Gen 2 and Gen 3 and how they get ported over to Nintendo Switch 2 or whatever device comes after the Switch 2. So hit the comments and let me know. So yeah, those are my theories for all the FireRed and LeafGreen questions that I put at the beginning of the video. But I want to say that not everything Pokemon related has been controversial or of mixed reception lately. Gen 10 was revealed recently, or Winds and Waves, and it looks really good. I think the visuals are very impressive, at least for Pokemon standards. And the world feels more alive, and the creatures look more animated than usual. I have high hopes for the game, but I'm not expecting something of the caliber of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but I think it will be a huge step up from what they did with Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. So yeah, bring on Gen 10, and in regards to future ports of older gens and their remakes, we will have to wait and see what happens. But as I said earlier, I think they continue to be slow in porting older games. They will continue to be sold on the eShop, and they might remake Gen 2 and Gen 3 again at some point. But time will tell. Thank you for watching the video, it means a lot, it always does. We love Pokemon here on this channel, and we will continue to cover it throughout this year and beyond, so stay tuned for more. And we already did 2 Pokemon themed videos before this one. The first one was my reaction to the Gen 10 reveal, and the second one was a nostalgic retrospective called Pokemon in the 90s, The Hype Was Real. And please consider checking them out, in particular the retrospective. And I want to thank everyone who saw that video, in particular those of you who commented, because I had a lot of fun having those back and forth with you in the comments. And that video's performance helped my channel grow a lot recently, so thank you to everyone who supported that video and who has supported the channel in general. And as I always say, if you like video games and pop culture in general, and if you're a nostalgic person, then this is your channel. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already yet. And once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.